pay attention to the woman in the flowing black abaya standing in the center of the Atlanta plaza. Her name is Princess Aliyah bint Fahd Al Saud, granddaughter of one of Saudi Arabia's most influential royals. Watch as she raises her designer heel, perfectly balanced, perfectly poised, over a Bible lying on the pavement. Then her legs freeze completely, unable to move even a centimeter.
My name is Aliyah. I'm 28 years old, and on October 14, 2021, I experienced something that shattered everything I believed about Jesus Christ. I was representing Saudi royalty at a diplomatic conference in Atlanta when I tried to publicly desecrate the Christian holy book. Then my legs completely stopped working. I was born into privilege most people only see in documentaries. My father was the younger brother of a powerful Saudi prince, and my mother, educated in London yet fiercely devoted to Islamic law, raised me to embody the perfect balance of Western sophistication and Eastern conviction. From the moment I could understand language, I was being groomed for cultural influence on the global stage. Prayer wasn't just a ritual in our household. It was woven into the very fabric of royal duty. 5 times daily, no matter what diplomatic function we were attending or which dignitary was visiting, everything paused and we turned toward Mecca. But unlike other Muslim families, our prayers carried an added weight. We weren't just worshipping Allah, we were representing the kingdom's spiritual authority to the world. By my teenage years, I had studied at the finest Islamic academies in Riyadh and had been personally tutored by some of the kingdom's most respected scholars. I could recite Quranic verses in flawless classical Arabic and debate Islamic jurisprudence with religious officials 3 times my age. But my passion for defending my faith wasn't just academic achievement, it was survival in a world where royal women were constantly scrutinized for any sign of weakness or Western contamination. I studied Christianity not to explore it, but to dismantle it. The concept of the Trinity was intellectual nonsense to my trained mind. How could Allah, who is one and indivisible, somehow be 3 persons? How could the infinite creator become a finite human being? These weren't just theological questions for me, they represented the fundamental error I believe was corrupting millions of souls worldwide, including young Saudis tempted by Western culture. During my university years at King Saud University, I led the Women's Islamic Awareness Initiative and spent countless hours in carefully monitored interfaith dialogue sessions with visiting Western students. These weren't friendly exchanges of ideas. For me, they were battlefields where I defended pure monotheism against what I saw as polytheistic corruption. I came prepared with verses from the Quran, historical evidence of biblical corruption, and an unshakable conviction that I was protecting not just my faith, but my nation's spiritual identity. The Christian students I encountered were passionate, but their explanations about Jesus being both fully God and fully man sounded like desperate philosophical gymnastics. When they spoke about Jesus dying for their sins, I felt a mixture of pity and irritation. How could they not see that Allah would never allow one of his prophets to be humiliated and executed? How could they believe the all-powerful Creator needed to sacrifice himself to forgive humanity when he could simply choose to forgive by divine decree? After graduation, I was appointed to the Kingdom's Cultural Diplomacy Division, a prestigious role that sent me to international conferences representing Saudi Arabia's progressive yet traditional image to the world. I specialized in interfaith relations, which meant I spent considerable time countering Christian and Jewish narratives about the Middle East while presenting Islam as the final, uncorrupted revelation. Atlanta had become a hub for evangelical Christianity, and I noticed their increasing boldness in international forums. At UN conferences, World Economic Forum meetings, and university partnerships, Christian organizations were becoming more vocal, more organized, and more sophisticated in their outreach. What disturbed me most was seeing young Muslim diplomats and students from Gulf nations, people from my world, actually engaging with Christian materials, attending Bible studies out of curiosity, or worse, expressing doubts about Islamic doctrine. Each time I witnessed this, something fierce ignited within me. I felt like I was watching souls from my community being led astray from the straight path. These weren't just random individuals, they were future leaders, potential influencers, people whose defection could inspire others. The responsibility to protect them pressed down on me like the weight of my royal heritage itself. I began coordinating with other Muslim diplomats and cultural attaches across major American cities to develop a more strategic response to Christian evangelism targeting Muslims in the West. We created educational workshops for Saudi students studying abroad, distributed literature explaining biblical corruption, and monitored which Christian organizations were most actively pursuing Muslim converts. My reputation grew, not just as a princess, but as a defender of the faith who could articulate our beliefs and demolish any challenge with eloquence and evidence. Community leaders from mosques in various cities sought my counsel when dealing with Christian outreach. Parents of Saudi students in America contacted me when their children encountered aggressive evangelism on campuses. I felt an enormous responsibility to be the shield protecting every Muslim I could reach from what I believe was spiritual deception wrapped in offers of free grace and unconditional love. The breaking point came in October 2021 when I arrived in Atlanta for a high-profile university partnership conference. My delegation was there to formalize educational agreements between Saudi institutions and several American universities. The event was carefully planned, politically significant, and heavily attended by international media. But on the second day, a Christian student group set up a table directly outside our venue, not aggressive or confrontational, but persistent and visible. They were distributing Bibles and Christian literature to conference attendees during breaks. I watched delegates from my own Muslim-majority country stopping to chat with them, accepting their materials, even smiling as they discussed theology. I saw young Saudi students in our delegation curiously picking up booklets titled, "Who is Jesus Really?" and "The Gospel of Grace." The sight of people from my world, people I was supposed to be leading, walking away with Bibles tucked under their conference folders made something inside me snap. Ask yourself this question: have you ever been so certain of something that you'd risk everything to defend it? Have you ever felt such passionate conviction that staying silent seemed like betrayal? That's exactly where I found myself. Every fiber of my being, every lesson from my royal upbringing, every verse I'd memorized screamed that I needed to take action to protect my community from what I believed was spiritual colonialism disguised as kindness. I called an emergency meeting with my cousins and senior attendants from the delegation. We discussed various responses, from filing formal complaints with conference organizers to demanding the Christian table be removed from the vicinity. Some of my handlers suggested we simply ignore them, arguing that engaging would only draw more attention. But I couldn't accept such passive weakness. A princess doesn't retreat. A princess makes statements. During one particularly intense discussion in my hotel suite, one of my cousins suggested something more dramatic. If they want to offer their book so boldly, perhaps we should show everyone what we truly think of it. The idea evolved quickly from abstract concept to concrete plan. We would publicly demonstrate our rejection of their scriptures in a way that would send an unmistakable message, not through violence or aggression, but through symbolic, powerful dismissal. I volunteered to be the one to do it. The plan was clear: we would approach the plaza as a united delegation, and I would physically demonstrate our rejection of the Bible in front of everyone. It would be filmed, it would be witnessed, and it would show the world that royal Muslim women don't bow to Christian pressure. But before I tell you what happened in that plaza, you need to understand the world that shaped me, because the woman who volunteered to desecrate a Bible wasn't born that way. She was carefully crafted, piece by piece, behind palace walls where luxury and control were two sides of the same golden coin. I grew up in a compound in Riyadh that most people would call a palace. Marble floors stretched endlessly beneath crystal chandeliers imported from Venice. Our gardens were maintained by a staff of 20, our meals prepared by chefs trained in Paris and Cairo. I had tutors for everything: classical Arabic, French, diplomatic protocol, Islamic jurisprudence, even the proper way to pour tea for visiting dignitaries. But luxury, I learned early, came with chains. My grandfather had been an advisor to the royal court during some of the kingdom's most transformative decades. My father carried that legacy like a crown he'd never officially wear, always positioning himself near power, always calculating how our family could remain relevant as the kingdom modernized. He saw me not as a daughter, but as an investment. A chess piece. A future ambassador of Saudi values to a watching world. My mother was different, but no less demanding. She'd been educated at the London School of Economics, spoke 4 languages fluently, and could navigate Western social circles with practiced ease. Yet beneath that cosmopolitan exterior burned an absolute devotion to Islamic orthodoxy. She believed, genuinely, fiercely, that her mission was to prove that Muslim women could be sophisticated and spiritually pure, modern and traditionally devout. Aliyah, she would tell me while adjusting my hijab before diplomatic functions, you represent more than yourself. You represent the kingdom. You represent Islam. Weakness in you is weakness in us all. My daily routine was a carefully orchestrated performance. Dawn prayer before sunrise. Quran recitation with my private Islamic tutor before breakfast, not just reading, but memorization, interpretation, historical context. Then etiquette lessons, how to greet foreign dignitaries, which fork to use at state dinners, how to deflect inappropriate questions from Western journalists while maintaining diplomatic grace. Afternoons were reserved for political education. My father's associates, analysts, cultural advisors, former ambassadors, would visit our home to discuss geopolitics, Western media narratives about Islam, and how to counter what they called Christian cultural imperialism. By age 16, I could articulate Saudi foreign policy positions better than some government spokespeople. But there were moments, rare, terrifying moments, when something inside me cracked. I remember being 15 at an interfaith youth summit in Geneva. A Christian girl my age from America spoke about Jesus with this unsettling confidence. Not arrogance, but certainty. She said, I know Jesus loves me because I feel him with me every day. Something about the way she said it made my chest tighten. Not with anger, with something I couldn't name. Something that felt dangerously close to longing. I buried it immediately. Doubled down on my Quran studies. Wrote a paper arguing that Christian claims about Jesus were historically unfounded. Won an award from our mosque for my defense of Islamic monotheism. That became my pattern. Whenever Christianity touched something tender in me, I responded with harder conviction, sharper arguments, more public displays of Islamic devotion. I mistook volume for certainty and performance for faith. The insecurity beneath my royal confidence was a secret I kept even from myself. I was terrified, absolutely terrified, that if I stopped performing strength for even a moment, everything I'd built would collapse. That people would see I wasn't the unshakable princess they believed me to be. That maybe, just maybe, my certainty was actually doubt wearing armor. So when the opportunity came to join the Atlanta delegation in October 2021, a high-profile university partnership conference where I'd represent Saudi cultural values to American academics and international media, I saw it as exactly what I needed. A stage. A platform. A chance to prove, once again, that I was everything my family, my kingdom, and my faith required me to be. I had no idea I was walking toward the moment that would strip away every mask I'd ever worn. October 12, 2021. The moment our private jet touched down at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, I felt it, that particular tension that always gripped me when entering American territory. The air itself felt different here. Loose. Uncontrolled. Spiritually chaotic in a way that both fascinated and repelled me. Our motorcade moved through the city toward the Mandarin Oriental, and I pressed my face close to the tinted window, watching. Church steeples rose between skyscrapers like declarations of defiance. Billboards advertised Sunday services alongside advertisements for concerts and shopping. A massive electronic sign outside a megachurch flashed, Jesus saves, all are welcome. The casualness of it, the way Christianity was woven so publicly, so unapologetically into the fabric of American life, made something in my stomach twist. In Saudi Arabia, faith was controlled, regulated, protected by the state. Here, it was wild. Everywhere. Christians didn't just practice their religion, they performed it, advertised it, offered it freely like street vendors hawking their goods. It felt invasive. Presumptuous. Like they believed their truth was so self-evident that everyone should simply accept it. They have no sense of sacred boundaries, I murmured to my cousin Noor, who sat beside me adjusting her abaya. She nodded, her jaw tight. This is why we're here. To show them that not everyone bows to their narrative. Our schedule for the next 3 days was meticulously planned. Meetings with university presidents to discuss academic partnerships. A state dinner with Georgia officials. Press conferences about cultural exchange and mutual understanding. Panel discussions on global education initiatives. Everything designed to present Saudi Arabia as a modern, sophisticated partner in international development while maintaining our distinct Islamic identity. The first 2 days passed smoothly. I delivered speeches about cultural diplomacy with practiced elegance. I fielded questions from American journalists about women's rights in Saudi Arabia with responses I'd perfected over years, acknowledging progress while defending tradition, appearing open-minded while maintaining firm boundaries. But then came October 14th. The morning session was held at a conference center in downtown Atlanta, a gleaming building surrounded by autumn trees and unseasonably warm sunshine. During the coffee break, I stepped outside with several members of my delegation, needing air after 3 hours of presentations in a windowless ballroom. That's when I saw them. A folding table. A bright banner reading, "Free Bibles, Jesus loves you." 4 or 5 college students, young, enthusiastic, utterly sincere, smiling at conference attendees as they passed. Stacks of Bibles in multiple languages. Christian literature spread out like a buffet. And people were stopping. Talking with them. Taking their materials. My hands clenched inside my designer clutch. "Are you seeing this?" Nor followed my gaze, her expression hardening. "They set up here?" During our conference. "It's deliberate," I said, my voice low and tight. "They know we're here. They know this is an international event with Muslim delegates. This is a provocation." One of my attendants, Fatima, touched my arm gently. "Your Highness, perhaps we should simply use another entrance." "No." The word came out sharper than I intended. "That's exactly what they want. For us to hide. To accommodate their disrespect." I watched as a young man from the Pakistani delegation accepted a Bible, smiling as a Christian student prayed with him right there on the sidewalk. My cousin from the Emirati contingent stopped to chat with them, laughing at something one of the students said. Something broke inside me. "We need to address this," I said, already turning toward our security detail. "Gather the senior women from our delegation. Tell them to meet me in conference room B in 10 minutes. My chief handler, Ahmed, a career diplomat who'd managed dozens of international trips, stepped into my path. "Princess Aliyah, I strongly advise against." "Against what?" "Against defending our faith? Against showing these people that Muslims don't accept their attempts at spiritual colonialism? Against creating an international incident," he said firmly. "This isn't Saudi Arabia. They have permits. They have rights. If you confront them publicly, it will become a media spectacle that could damage the kingdom's reputation." "Our reputation is already being damaged," I shot back. "Every Muslim who stops at that table, every delegate who accepts their materials, it makes us look weak. Confused. Like we don't have confidence in our own faith." Ahmed's expression shifted from diplomatic to almost pleading. "Your Highness, please. Let it go." But I couldn't. A princess cannot appear weak. Not in public. Not in the West. Not when the world is watching to see if Muslim women can stand firm against cultural pressure. "This conversation is over," I said with royal finality. "Arrange the meeting." I walked back inside with my delegation flowing behind me like a black tide, my mind already racing through what needed to be said, what needed to be done. I was so certain I was defending truth. I had no idea I was about to collide with it. Conference room B filled quickly. 8 women from various delegations, my cousins, senior attendants, cultural advisors who traveled with us from Riyadh. All of them shared my frustration, my sense of violation at what was happening outside. "They're being strategic," said Layla, one of my mother's closest associates. "Setting up during our conference, targeting Muslim delegates specifically. This is calculated missionary work. And we're just supposed to accept it." Noor's voice carried the same edge I felt. "Smile politely while they try to convert our people." I stood at the head of the table, my decision already made. We're going to make a statement. A public one. We're going to show them, and show every Muslim delegate at this conference, that we don't fear their book or their message. The room went quiet. Everyone understood what I was suggesting without me having to spell it out. Your Highness, one of the older advisors began cautiously, if this becomes confrontational. It won't be violent, I interrupted. But it will be unmistakable. We will demonstrate our rejection of their attempts to undermine our faith. And we will do it with dignity, as representatives of the kingdom. 15 minutes later, we emerged from the conference center together. 9 women in flowing black abayas, moving with unified purpose across the plaza. The autumn sun caught the silk of our garments, making us look like a processional, which, in a sense, we were. A religious procession. A statement of conviction marching toward confrontation. People noticed immediately. Conference attendees stopped mid-conversation, turning to watch. A cluster of Japanese diplomats pointed. American university officials paused on the steps, confused but intrigued. I could see phones being raised, cameras activating. Good. I wanted this witnessed. I wanted this recorded. The Christian students saw us coming. Their enthusiastic smiles faltered. One girl, couldn't have been more than 20, gripped her stack of Bibles a little tighter. An older student, maybe a campus minister, stepped slightly forward, positioning himself protectively in front of the table. But then something shifted in their posture. Several of them closed their eyes. Their lips began moving silently. They were praying. The realization sent a flash of anger through me. Even now, even facing opposition, they had that infuriating confidence. That certainty that their God was listening, that their prayers had power. It was exactly that presumption I needed to shatter. As we approached, I noticed something that seemed almost providential, a Bible lying on the pavement about 10 feet from their table. Someone had dropped it, or set it down and forgotten it. It lay there on the concrete, cover facing up, the word, Holy Bible, clearly visible in gold lettering. Perfect. Nor leaned close, her whisper urgent and encouraging, show them our conviction. Show them we do not fear their book. The crowd around us had swelled to maybe 60 or 70 people. Diplomats. Students. Tourists who'd wandered over to see what was happening. Conference staff with worried expressions. Local news cameras from a crew that had been covering the event. This was the stage I'd wanted. The platform I demanded. The moment where Princess Aliyah bint Fahd Al Saud would demonstrate to the world that royal Muslim women don't bend, don't compromise, don't bow to Western religious pressure. My internal dialogue was a rushing torrent. This is loyalty. This is faith. This is courage. History will remember this moment. My family will be proud. The kingdom will be proud. Every Muslim watching will see that we can be strong in the West without being corrupted by it. I walked forward, my designer heels clicking against the concrete with aristocratic precision. The crowd parted instinctively, creating a clear path to the Bible on the ground. I stopped directly in front of it. The plaza fell silent. Even the traffic noise from the street seemed to fade. I could feel dozens of eyes on me, some curious, some horrified, some eagerly anticipatory. One of my attendants moved to pick up the Bible, perhaps thinking I wanted it removed. I raised my hand, stopping her. No, I said clearly, loud enough for the crowd to hear. They must see our rejection. They must understand that not everyone accepts their claims. I positioned myself carefully. Lifted my right foot. Perfectly balanced. Perfectly poised. The sole of my heel hovered inches above the gold-lettered cover. Every fiber of my being was certain I was doing the right thing. Every fiber of my being was absolutely, catastrophically wrong. I brought my foot down. And everything changed. The moment my heel made contact with the Bible's cover, my entire lower body locked up. Not gradually. Instantly. It felt like someone had poured liquid concrete into my legs and it had hardened in a single second. My muscles, from my hips down to my toes, turned to marble. Solid. Immovable. Completely unresponsive to any command my brain sent screaming down my nervous system. My mind was fully alert. Racing, actually. But my body had become a prison. I tried to shift my weight. Nothing. Tried to lift my foot. Nothing. Tried to wiggle my toes inside my designer heels. Not even a tremor. The confusion hit first, before the panic. What is this? A stroke? Some kind of neurological attack? Your Highness? Nor's voice came from beside me, uncertain. Are you? Then she saw my face. Saw whatever expression of bewildered terror must have been written there. Your Highness. Her voice shot up in pitch. Aaliyah, what's wrong? My attendants rushed forward, hands grabbing my arms to steady me. I hadn't fallen, I was still standing, still balanced on that one foot pressed against the Bible, the other frozen mid-step. But I was trembling. My upper body shaking with the effort of trying to force my legs to obey. She's ill, someone shouted. Call medical. Princess, can you hear us? Fatima's face appeared in front of mine, her eyes wide with panic. Should we call an ambulance? I tried to answer. My lips moved, but only a strangled sound came out. Because the paralysis was spreading, not outward, but inward. I could feel it like invisible chains wrapping tighter around my bones, my muscles, crawling up my spine with suffocating pressure. The crowd erupted in noise. Gasps. Shouts. The frantic rustle of movement as people surged closer or stumbled backward. I heard multiple languages, Arabic, English, Japanese, French, all blending into a cacophony of confusion and alarm. Camera phones everywhere. Dozens of them. Recording my humiliation. Capturing the moment when Princess Aaliyah bint Fahd Al Saud, granddaughter of royalty, defender of Islam, unshakable in her conviction, became utterly, completely helpless in front of hundreds of strangers. The Christian students' prayers intensified. I could hear them now, urgent and fervent. Jesus, have mercy. Lord, we don't understand what's happening. Father, show your truth. No, I thought desperately. This isn't their God. This is a medical episode. A neurological malfunction. It has nothing to do with. But I couldn't finish the thought. Because my eyes were locked on the Bible beneath my foot. I couldn't look away. Couldn't shift my gaze even a millimeter. It was like my entire field of vision had narrowed to that single point of contact where my designer heel pressed against the gold lettering. And then the heat began. Not burning. Not painful. But alive. That's the only word I have for it. A living heat that rose from the book into the sole of my foot, spreading up through my ankle, my calf, my knee. It moved through my frozen muscles like water through dry ground, warm, insistent, undeniable. My breath came in short, sharp gasps. My upper body swayed as my attendants tried to keep me upright. Get her to sit down, someone commanded. We can't move her legs. What do you mean you can't move her legs? They won't budge. It's like she's stuck to the ground. The heat continued its relentless journey upward. Through my hips. Into my abdomen. Spreading across my chest. Crawling up my spine vertebra by vertebra. And with it came something else, something I had no framework to understand. Presence. Not my presence. Someone else's. Something else's. Like the air itself had become aware and was pressing in on me from all sides. Like the space between atoms had suddenly become occupied by something vast and ancient and utterly terrifying. My lips trembled. Tears, unexpected, unwanted, burned at the corners of my eyes. Your Highness, please, tell us what's wrong. Layla's voice cracked with fear. But I couldn't answer. Couldn't speak. Because the heat had reached my head now, and with it came a sound. Not audible, nothing anyone else could hear, but undeniable. A voice without words. A question without language. And yet I understood it perfectly. Why do you fight what you do not know? The question reverberated through my entire being. Not accusatory. Not angry. Just present. Unavoidable. Like it had been waiting my entire life to be asked, and now, here, in this plaza, with my foot pressed against the book I tried to desecrate, it could no longer be ignored. My first terrifying thought crashed through my mind with the force of revelation. What if this isn't a medical episode? What if this is him? What if I just touched something I should never have challenged? The tears spilled over, cutting hot trails down my cheeks beneath my hijab. And still, I could not move. The question hung in the air between my consciousness and whatever presence had invaded it. Why do you fight what you do not know? I wanted to answer. Wanted to shout back that I did know. I'd studied Christianity for years, debated it, dismantled it, proven it false 100 times over. But the words wouldn't form. Because beneath my practiced arguments, beneath my royal certainty, a deeper truth was surfacing. I didn't know. I'd never really known. I'd only ever fought. The tears came harder now, streaming down my face despite every instinct to suppress them. A princess doesn't cry in public. A princess doesn't show weakness. A princess doesn't. But I wasn't being a princess anymore. I was being stripped down to something far more fundamental. To the frightened girl beneath the title. To the woman who'd spent her entire life performing conviction while running from doubt. And then the memories came. Not slowly. Not gently. Like a dam breaking, like a flood I'd been holding back with both hands for years, suddenly overwhelming every defense I'd built. I was 16 again, alone in my room in the palace, laptop hidden under my blankets at 2 in the morning. A documentary about Christian missionaries had been left open on a browser, and instead of closing it with disgust as I should have, I'd watched them pray for healing and seen people stand up from wheelchairs. Watched them speak about Jesus with tears of joy. Watched their absolute certainty that they weren't just following a prophet, but encountering a living God. I'd closed the laptop trembling. Deleted the browser history. Never spoke of it to anyone. But the images had haunted me for weeks. I was 19, studying at university, when the dream came. Jesus on a cross, not the sanitized religious icon I'd seen in textbooks, but vivid, agonizing, real. His eyes had opened and looked directly at me. Not with anger. Not with judgment. With something that looked impossibly like recognition. Like he'd been waiting for me. I'd woken up gasping, heart pounding, and had immediately performed extra prayers to cleanse myself of what I convinced myself was spiritual attack. I was 23, at an interfaith summit in Switzerland, when an American girl my age had approached me during a break. We debated theology for 20 minutes, me with my practiced arguments, her with humble sincerity. As we parted, she touched my arm gently and said, "Aliyah, Jesus sees you. He knows you. And he's waiting for you to stop running." I'd laughed it off. Dismissed her as naive. But her words had echoed in my mind for months afterward. All those moments I'd buried. All those cracks in my armor I'd plastered over with more zeal, more studying, more public demonstrations of faith. All those times something in me had whispered what if before I could silence it with impossible. They all surfaced now, crashing over me in waves. And with them came the sensation I'd been most afraid of my entire life, being truly, completely, terrifyingly seen. Not as Princess Aliyah. Not as a royal diplomat or cultural defender or Islamic scholar. But as me. The frightened, doubting, secretly hungry soul I'd hidden beneath layers of performance and pride. Every secret fear. Every buried question. Every moment of weakness I'd never admitted to anyone. He saw it all. The exposure should have felt like judgment. Like condemnation. Like the punishment I'd been taught awaited those who doubted. Instead, impossibly, it felt like love. Overwhelming. Unearned. Unconditional. A love that didn't demand I perform or prove or perfect myself first. A love that simply was, as present and undeniable as the heat still coursing through my body. My internal war raged with desperate intensity. My royal pride screamed, "This is humiliation. Deception. Spiritual attack designed to break you." But something deeper, something I'd suppressed my entire life, whispered back, what if this is the truth you've been terrified to face? What if Jesus wasn't just a prophet? What if the Bible wasn't corrupted? What if everything I'd built my identity on was the lie, and this overwhelming presence was the truth? The words formed before I could stop them. Before my rational mind could intervene. Before my royal training could censor them. They bubbled up from that deep, hidden place where my real self had been locked away for 28 years. Jesus. My lips trembled around his name. If this is you, show me. The moment his name left my tongue, everything shifted. The paralysis tightened first, one last crushing pressure that drove the breath from my lungs and sent stars shooting across my vision. Then it snapped. Like chains breaking. Like prison doors flying open. Like something that had been binding me my entire life suddenly shattering into nothing. My legs unlocked. My muscles responded. The invisible weight lifted. And I fell. I didn't collapse from weakness. I fell from awe. My knees hit the concrete hard enough that I'd have bruises for weeks, but I barely felt the impact. My hands reached forward instinctively to catch myself, and my right palm landed flat against the Bible I tried to crush. The sensation was indescribable. Fire and water at the same time. Burning and soothing. Terrifying and comforting. Like touching something infinitely holy and discovering it didn't consume me, it knew me. A sob tore from my throat. Not the quiet, controlled tears of before, but a sound I'd never made in public. Raw. Broken. Utterly vulnerable. My attendant stumbled backward. Your Highness, Fatima's voice shook. What just happened? Noor stood frozen, her face pale. Did you see that? Did everyone see that? Layla had her phone out, already dialing. We need to get her away from here. Now. But the Christian students were moving closer. Slowly, carefully, like they were approaching something sacred. Their faces held no triumph, no, I told you so, smugness. Only stunned silence and what looked like reverent wonder. The young girl who'd been handing out Bibles knelt down a few feet away from me, tears streaming down her face. Are you okay? She whispered. I couldn't answer. Couldn't even look at her. My eyes were still locked on the Bible beneath my hand, on the gold lettering that seemed to glow in the October sunlight. Security materialized from everywhere at once. Conference security. Our diplomatic protection detail. Someone in an official vest barking orders into a radio. We need to move the princess immediately. Clear a path. Get the vehicles. Hands grabbed my arms, Ahmed and two security officers lifting me to my feet. My legs worked now. Responded. But they felt weak, unsteady, like I was learning to walk for the first time. Can you walk, Your Highness? Ahmed's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. We need to get you out of here. I nodded mutely. Let them guide me through the crowd that parted like the Red Sea. Phones everywhere, still recording. Dozens of faces, some concerned, some confused, some lit with religious fervor. The Christian students watching me leave with expressions I couldn't begin to interpret. The motorcade was already running when we reached it. They practically lifted me into the SUV. Doors slammed. We pulled away from the plaza with diplomatic urgency. Ahmed was on his phone immediately. Yes, I understand. No ambulance. I said we're handling it internally. The footage needs to be contained. Yes, all of it. I heard the words like they were coming from underwater. Diplomatic pressure. Media suppression. Protecting the kingdom's image. Making sure this incident disappeared from public record as quickly as possible. They wanted to erase what had just happened. But it was burned into every cell of my body. Back at the Four Seasons, they escorted me to my suite with instructions that I was not to be disturbed. That I needed rest. That the royal physician was being contacted. The moment the door closed behind them, I made it 3 steps before my legs gave out again. I collapsed onto the marble floor of the bathroom and wept. Not from shame. Not from humiliation. From revelation. Everything I'd believed. Everything I'd defended, everything I'd built my identity on, it was crumbling. And beneath the rubble, something new was emerging. Something terrifying and beautiful and absolutely undeniable. Hours passed. The suite grew dark. I didn't move from that bathroom floor. For the first time in my life, I prayed without memorized words. Without ritual washing or proper positioning or carefully chosen Arabic phrases. I just talked. To the presence I'd felt in the plaza. To the voice that had asked me why I fought what I didn't know. To Jesus, the name that had broken my chains. I don't understand what happened. My voice was hoarse from crying. I don't understand any of this. Everything I was taught says you're just a prophet. That the Bible is corrupted. That this is impossible. I pressed my forehead against the cool marble. But I felt you. I felt you. And I've never felt anything that real in my entire life. The words came slowly, painfully honest. I'm terrified. Of what this means. Of what my family will say. Of what I'll lose if this is true. But I'm more terrified of walking away from whatever just happened to me. I took a shaking breath. So if you're real, if you really stop me in that plaza, if you really see me the way I felt seen, then show me more. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to let go of everything I've been. But I can't pretend this didn't happen. Silence filled the suite. But it wasn't empty silence. It was the pregnant quiet of something about to begin. I had come to Atlanta to make a statement. Instead, God had made me His. I must have eventually moved from the bathroom floor to the bed, because that's where I was when sleep finally claimed me sometime after midnight. And that's when He came. Not in the abstract, theological way I'd been taught to think about prophets and divine messengers. Not as a distant historical figure or a corrupted Western deity. He came as Himself. The dream was more vivid than any I'd ever experienced. I stood in a place that was simultaneously nowhere and everywhere, endless light that didn't hurt my eyes, warmth that didn't burn, silence that somehow contained all music. And Jesus stood before me. I knew it was Him. Not because of paintings I'd seen or descriptions I dismissed. I simply knew, the way you know your own reflection. I expected anger. Expected condemnation for the years I'd spent arguing against Him, mocking His followers, trying to stomp on His word. I braced myself for the judgment I'd been taught awaited those who had known truth and rejected it. Instead, He smiled. And then He spoke, not with audible words, but with a communication that bypassed language entirely and went straight to my heart. Come to me. Not, you should be ashamed. Not, why did you fight me? Not, you must earn your way back. Just, come to me. An invitation. Open arms. The same overwhelming love I'd felt in the plaza, but now with a face, a presence, a person behind it. I tried to speak in the dream, to apologize, to explain, to bargain. But He just kept looking at me with those eyes that saw everything and loved anyway. Come to me, Aaliyah. Come as you are. Not as you think you should be. I woke with tears already streaming down my face and absolute certainty lodged in my chest like an anchor. Something had fundamentally, irreversibly changed. I wasn't the same woman who'd stepped onto that plaza yesterday. I would never be that woman again. The next 3 days in Atlanta passed in a surreal haze of diplomatic obligations by day and spiritual revolution by night. I delivered my scheduled speeches. Attended the required meetings. Smiled for cameras. But every moment felt like I was performing a role in a play while my real self was somewhere else entirely. On the second night, I did something that would have been unthinkable 72 hours earlier. I contacted the Christian students. Through a carefully worded text to a number I'd gotten from conference materials, I asked if they would meet with me. Privately. Secretly. No cameras, no announcements, no diplomatic oversight. They agreed immediately. We met in a quiet corner of a hotel restaurant, far from my delegation's accommodations. There were 4 of them, the young girl who'd knelt beside me, an older student named Marcus who seemed to be their leader, and 2 others whose names I struggled to remember through my nervousness. I expected them to gloat. To say, "We told you so." To push me for a public testimony or try to convert me aggressively like the missionaries I'd always feared. Instead, they were gentle. "We don't fully understand what happened either," Marcus said quietly. "But we know God moved. And we're honored you trusted us enough to reach out." They answered my questions without judgment. When I asked about the Trinity, they didn't mock my confusion, they admitted it was a mystery beyond full human comprehension. When I asked about the Bible's reliability, they gave me historical evidence without condescension. When I asked about what it meant to follow Jesus, they spoke about relationship, not rules. Before we parted, the young girl, her name was Sarah, pressed something into my hands. A Bible. Small, leather-bound, with gilt edges. "For when you're ready," she said softly. I stared at it. The same book I'd tried to destroy. Now being offered as a gift. "I can't," I whispered. "If anyone finds this in my luggage." "Hide it," Marcus said. "We've learned that sometimes the most important truths have to be protected until the right time." I tucked it deep into my designer luggage that night, wrapped in a scarf, buried beneath clothes and cosmetics. 2 days later, I returned to Saudi Arabia carrying contraband scripture and a transformed heart. The next months became a double life I never imagined I'd lead. By day, I was still Princess Aliyah, attending diplomatic functions, leading cultural initiatives, maintaining the image my family and kingdom required. By night, I locked myself in bathrooms with that hidden Bible, reading by phone light while the palace slept. I started with the Gospel of John. "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." The words hit me like electricity. This wasn't corrupted. This wasn't manipulated. This was alive. Night after night, truth broke through layers of fear and tradition like dawn breaking through darkness. Every verse felt like it had been written specifically for me. Every promise felt personal. Every teaching stripped away another piece of the armor I'd worn my entire life. The danger was real. Discovery could mean everything from family disgrace to legal consequences. But the beauty was greater than the risk. I was meeting Jesus in secret. And in that dangerous, hidden place, I was finally, truly free. 6 months have passed since October 14, 2021. 6 months of living two lives, the one everyone sees, and the one only Jesus knows. By day, I'm still Princess Aliyah bint Fahd Al Saud. I attend royal functions. I represent the kingdom at diplomatic events. I maintain the image my family trained me to project. But the woman wearing that title isn't the same woman who boarded that plane to Atlanta. The cost has been significant. I carry a loneliness I never anticipated, sitting in rooms full of family while harboring a secret that would shatter them. Smiling through conversations about Islamic initiatives while my heart is secretly meditating on the Sermon on the Mount. Maintaining careful distance from the life I'm living inside, the faith I'm nurturing in hidden moments. I can't share what happened with my mother. Can't tell my father about the dreams where Jesus speaks to me. Can't explain to my cousins why I've grown quieter, more contemplative, less eager to debate and defend. The isolation is real. The fear is constant. One discovered Bible, one overheard prayer, one moment of carelessness could cost me everything I've ever known. But the gain defies description. I have peace I never knew existed. Not the performance of confidence I wore like armor, but actual peace, deep, unshakable, rooted in something beyond my circumstances or my identity or my achievements. A peace that remains even when I'm terrified of discovery. A peace that whispers, "You are loved," even when I feel utterly alone. I have purpose beyond royal duty. For the first time in my life, I'm not striving to prove myself worthy of my title or my lineage or my faith. I'm simply learning to receive love I didn't earn and can't lose. Looking back now at that moment in the plaza, I understand it differently. What felt like humiliation was actually mercy. What looked like public defeat was private rescue. God stopped me so publicly because that's what it took to break through my armor. A quiet whisper wouldn't have reached me. A gentle invitation wouldn't have penetrated the layers of pride and performance I'd built around my heart. He had to interrupt my life dramatically because I was so desperately lost while being so completely convinced I had found truth. The Bible I tried to stomp became the light leading me home. The book I viewed as corrupted became the words that liberated me. The message I attempted to silence became the voice I now listen for in every quiet moment. My identity has shifted in ways I'm still discovering. I'm no longer primarily shaped by royal expectations or family legacy or national pride. I'm being reborn in truth, slowly, painfully, beautifully. Becoming someone I never imagined I could be, a daughter. Not of a prince. Not of a kingdom. But of the King who loved me enough to stop me before I destroyed myself. The journey continues. I'm still navigating danger. Still hiding my faith. Still learning what it means to follow Jesus in circumstances that make following him almost impossible. Some days the fear overwhelms me. Some days I wonder if I'm strong enough to sustain this double life. Some days I'm tempted to rationalize my way back to the certainty I used to perform. But then I remember the paralysis. The presence. The overwhelming love that saw all of me and didn't turn away. And I know I can never go back to the woman I was. If you're reading this story, here's what I want you to understand: God will interrupt your life if that's what it takes to save it. He'll stop you mid-step if you're heading toward destruction. He'll shatter your certainty if your certainty is keeping you from truth. He'll expose your armor if that armor is suffocating your soul. It won't feel like mercy in the moment. It'll feel like humiliation. Like loss. Like everything you built crumbling beneath your feet. But on the other side of that breaking is a freedom you can't imagine from inside your prison. I sit now in my private quarters, well past midnight, with that hidden Bible open before me. The same book I tried to crush. The same words I called corrupted. They glow in the lamplight like treasure. My lips move in prayer, not the memorized rituals of my childhood, but honest conversation with someone who listens. Someone who knows my real name beneath all my titles. Someone who stopped me from making the biggest mistake of my life and then invited me into his presence despite everything I'd done against him. The path ahead is uncertain. The danger is real. The cost continues to climb. But I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I came to Atlanta to make a statement. Instead, God made me his daughter. And nothing, not royal expectations, not family pressure, not even the threat of losing everything, will ever make me regret the moment my legs froze and my heart finally, truly, opened. Before you go, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so YouTube keeps showing you stories like this. Share it with someone who needs hope. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? I read every single comment. Thank you for listening to our story. May the King of Kings meet you in your darkest hour, just like he met us in ours. God bless you.